Welcome to the Marvelous Work and a Wonder Worldwide Radio Talk Show. At no time during the history of our world has a place existed where a person can go and ask any question about their human existence and have that question answered with authority, clarity, and completeness. During this radio talk show, many of the great and marvelous things that have been hidden from our understanding since the foundation of this world will be revealed. We've always known these real truths. They exist, hidden in the back of our mind within the confines of our imagination. Within the human mind, seeds of imagination sprout into belief systems of philosophy and religion. But these do not answer the basic questions of our existence. Who are we, and why do we exist? Religion and philosophy have produced fruits of discord, prejudice, and hate. These things are destroying our humanity. The purpose of the Marvelous Work and a Wonder is to introduce the real truth about our existence as human beings. Within its answers, the solutions to our human problems are found. Most of our problems are a cause of our ignorance, and our current experience upon this earth manifests the influence of this ignorance. This show is where current reality meets real truth.
The universe, as we currently know it, seems to be a vast and endless space full of unanswered questions. There are many things that we don't know about our relationship to the universe. But what we do know is that we exist as conscious, free-willed life forms, and from this perception we form our own reality. But our reality seems to expand and change as we learn more about ourselves. We know that we often think about who we are as human beings. We wonder about ourselves because, unlike other life forms, we are aware that we have a relationship with the universe. We just can't figure out what it is. Some have wondered, how long are we going to be kept in the dark, existing on a planet, spinning through space for who knows how much longer? My name is Christopher. I'm called a messenger because I was assigned by those who know the answers to deliver a message of real truth. It is a message that can help the human race understand itself better. It can answer all the questions that people have ever wondered about their existence. For the next hour, I will attempt to introduce the world to a work that is unlike anything before it, anything that now exists, or anything that might come in the future. This work is called The Marvelous Work and a Wonder. There is no other work as marvelous, and there is no other that can fill the human mind with wonderment and a complete understanding of who we are and why we exist. The symbolism of the official logo for The Marvelous Work and a Wonder is a light that shines behind the world. The realities of this world block the light from illuminating our minds. They do not allow us to see the universe for what it really is. The darkness of the world's reality is ignorance. This ignorance, or lack of knowledge, comprises the errant way in which human beings view themselves and their relationship with the universe. This ignorance is responsible for all our misery and unhappiness. The Marvelous Work and a Wonder has the power to illuminate the mind and change the life of anyone who listens to its message and ponders its real truths. It has the power of transforming the darkness of ignorance into the light of pure knowledge, which is simply a clear understanding of things as they are, as they were, and as they will always be. Everything that the marvelous work in a wonder reveals in its message has been hidden from the minds of the people of the earth, and it will remain hidden if, because of pride and the unwillingness of the people, they do not open up their minds and consider something other than what they already believe to be true. Things that are hidden already exist. They're just hidden, which means that it's hard for our minds to grasp them and find their true meaning. The purpose of the marvelous work in a wonder is to assist a person in finding the true meaning and purpose of their existence. Current knowledge has failed to solve the world's problems. What humans understand and accept as truth has failed to create a world of peace and happiness. This ignorance has led to continual misery caused by war, pestilence, inequality, and poverty, all cause and effects of our ignorance. The final judgment of this marvelous work in a wonder is whether or not it has the power to persuade the people of the world to do good. If the world considers its message and the people learn many things that they do not yet understand, can this work solve the world's problems and heal the emotional wounds of its people? The answer is simple. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. To begin, let's consider for a moment our innate predisposition, our desire to wonder about ourselves. What causes this predisposition, and why don't other life forms have it? Throughout our history, as we have pondered about our existence, we have developed many different belief systems and ideas that to some degree seem to satisfy our desire to know. Many have accepted these belief systems and are not motivated to believe in anything else. Why should they? If we don't have to worry about who we are and why we exist, we can then get on with existing and living our lives in pursuit of whatever makes us happy. Yep. Our desire to live and be happy has convinced us or motivated us to stop wondering and considering new ideas. But are we really happy? Some, to make themselves feel smart, or at least appear to others as if they are, might lean to philosophy to ponder their reality and existence. When we philosophize with each other, we become personally responsible for the answers that we think are correct. But we also bear the individual responsibility of being proven wrong. To protect our egos from being proven wrong, humans developed another form of a belief system known as religion. Religion takes away the personal responsibility of being right or wrong and places this burden upon others. The religious leaders, spiritual advisors, and those to whom we look for advice and answers to our questions. Then, over time, combining the two types of belief systems, philosophy and religion, or at least the personal responsibility tied to each, we've developed a scientific system that places the responsibility of understanding on each person who comes up with a theory. The personal responsibility, however, is minimized because scientific theories are not accepted unless they can be proven and are accepted by others. Keep in mind that science is simply a process in which we observe something about our current reality, then philosophize, or rather theorize, why it is what it is. And scientists can be just as prideful and close-minded and just as devoted to their belief system as those who choose religion as theirs. Basically, all human understanding comes from one of these belief systems, but when we analyze them honestly, they appear to be nothing more than reflections of each other. And we either accept them or reject them according to the way that they protect our personal value and ego. These belief systems are continually changing over time. What was believed to be true in the past is no longer true today. And following this proven course of human knowledge, what we believe today will not be true in the future. Real truth consists of those things that do not change over time, but have always remained the same. The term real truth will be used throughout the message that I deliver. I am the only public representative of the marvelous work in a wonder, and I use the term a lot in my presentations. I bold the term often in all of my writings, I do this to emphasize the difference between those things that the world believes to be true but are continually changing, and those things that are real truth that never change. Real truth is the same yesterday in that its concepts have always been the way things are in all of human experience throughout the universe. It is the same today because its information agrees with its past, and it will remain the same forever because it will always provide the same answers to our questions about human existence today as it did in the past and as it will in the future. This marvelous work and a wonder exists outside the realm of the belief systems that have developed upon this earth. It is not a philosophy for which I am personally responsible. This work's critics and enemies would like to believe that I made everything up. I do appreciate their vote of confidence and the flattery of my personal abilities, but an honest and thorough investigation into the marvelous work and a wonder would prove otherwise. This work is not a religion in any sense of the word. A person who embraces it becomes independently empowered and is able to break the chains of control by which organized religion holds a person's mind captive. This work cannot be considered a scientific observation that ends in hypothesis and theory. The marvelous work and wonder has no theories that change over time and are replaced with future theories. It is based on unchangeable, real truth. It stands alone because it is the only work that offers the world this real truth. And real truth is knowledge of things as they are presently, as they were in the past, and as they are to come in the future. Now let's take a moment to consider our current human experience upon this earth. Our reality is what we observe today in the present. Our current reality is really all we know for sure. But even this reality is affected by the belief systems that shape the way we look at life, and more importantly, the way we look and treat each other. And because we view each of our lives from a different perspective, an individual perspective, our present individual experience can only be perceived as unchangeable real truth to ourself. No other human perceives our reality as we do. We cannot trust what has occurred in our past because we have the tendency, due to the way our brains work, to forget many things. In other words, we have lousy memories. When we forget things about our past, our brain tends to fill in these blanks with our imagination, which is also affected by the belief systems that we embrace. Our past is directly linked to our present experience because we know that we had experiences that occurred yesterday before our present reality. Our past experience tends to shape our present experience. And we also know that our present experience is directly linked to our future. But how do we know this for sure when the future hasn't happened yet? We can assume that we will have a future because we know that we had a past. In the past, our present experience became our future experience. Thus, our future is linked to our present and our past. Now, I know that what I just explained might seem a bit confusing right now. So let me go on and repeat it again, because it is one of the most profound and important mental concepts to master in order to come to a complete understanding of unchangeable real truth. It is at this point where the marvelous work and the wonder leaves the path of conventional thinking and enters the realm of real truth. And remember, conventional thinking is continually changing as our knowledge seems to increase. The following explanation of real truth might be hard for some to accept and understand initially, but eventually, as we continue to progress intellectually into our future, it will be proven to be the absolute truth. Before I take a few minutes to explain this real truth in detail, hopefully in a way so that everyone can understand it, let me clearly state this real truth about human experience. Human beings have always been. There has never been a time when there haven't been human beings living somewhere in the universe. As human beings, we each exist independently of each other as unchangeable, free-willed entities that experience past, present, and future events on the exact same cognitive level, In other words, no matter what our perception of time might be currently, we actually experience all things in the present. Now I know that I lost many of you, and that there's very few of you who understood what I just said. So let's see if I can continue and help you understand more clearly by restating again what I said previously just a few moments ago. But let's put it another way. Our reality is what we observe today in the present. Our current reality is really all we know for sure. Our past is directly linked to our present experience because we know that we had experiences that occurred yesterday before our present reality. And we also know that our present experience is directly linked to our future. And again, how do we know this for sure when the future hasn't happened yet? Because in the past, our present experience became our future experience. Thus, our future is linked to our present and to our past. Now, I'm sure this still doesn't make a lot of sense to most people because few know the detail and the complete information revealed through this marvelous work and wonder. But if one is willing and one listens to these presentations, in time it will all make perfect sense. Since this work can answer all of the philosophical questions that have remained unanswered throughout our history, let's consider one of these questions and use it as a backdrop to help establish the fact that human beings have always existed. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? If we plug the question into the concept that our past, present, and future are all directly linked with each other in a perfect continuum, then we can see that the chicken and the egg have always existed. From an egg's perspective, the present perspective of an egg, it used to be a chicken in its past. And in its future, it will be once again a chicken. And then that future chicken will lay an egg that will become again a chicken. So again, from the egg's perspective, has it ever not been a chicken? It's always been one in one of its forms or another. The theories of science, one of those belief systems we've invented to answer our questions, theorize that all life forms have evolved over time. The holes in this theory are revealed by considering the process of a chicken laying an egg. If the egg in its perfect environment and nature continues the same process of being an egg, then hatching into a chicken that lays itself from the egg's perspective, and then becomes another chicken who lays itself perpetually, then it will always be the same and never change. This concept is getting a little deep right now. But this same concept of real truth can be applied to a human being and the way an unchangeable human experiences life. From here on in this presentation, I will use the term advanced human to represent a person whose physical appearance and abilities do not change, but remain the same forever. Notice that I said physical appearance and abilities because humans continually have new experiences forever. The reality of our existence, now revealed for the first time in the history of this world through this marvelous work and wonder, is that in our past we were advanced humans. In our future we will be advanced humans. And now for the big shocker. Presently, yep, in our current reality, we are advanced humans going through a mortal experience upon this earth. Our experience is a continuum of one eternal round, always occurring in the present. As explained, as advanced humans, we do not perceive things as the past or future, but only as the present. How in the world can this be? I'm sure millions, billions, most people are asking themselves this. If humans have always been, and new human beings are created all the time by other humans who have always been, then who brought the first creators into existence? Well, let's consider for a moment exactly what a human being is. A human being is nothing more than a totality of individual experience while reacting within an environment with a physical body. In other words, we are the sum of the way that we record the stimuli that comes from our environment through our senses. That's all experience is. The experience is recorded in the human brain. Very simple. Although we are not comfortable considering that a human is nothing more than what's stored in the brain the proof is worth pondering. Evidence of this is the fact that damage or deterioration to the brain can change one's personality and cause them to become seemingly a completely different person. But the greatest proof is soon to come. Science will eventually learn how to keep a severed head alive and fully conscious of its surroundings. The person having only a head will continue to record experience as a computer generates an artificial environment. Whoa. What then will happen to the conventional wisdom about a human being? How then will religion, philosophy, and science change to accommodate this new reality? This will prove, however, once and for all, that a human is simply the totality of stored individual experience in the brain that is gained by reacting within its environment, and in the case of a bodiless person, the environment is computer-generated. But who in the world wants a computer creating an environment when we can have a beautiful human body doing the same thing? Nothing is more beautiful to a human being than the human body. Our perception of beauty and perfection is uniquely human. We recognize the beauty of the human form above any other shape in the universe. Now let's consider for a moment a human being in its perfect form, living in its perfect environment, in an environment that sustains everything that is perfect for the human being. Like the chicken and the egg, human beings have always existed in their perfect form. Always. This is a real truth that might be hard for some to accept until they understand the details surrounding human existence. And now, for the first time in the history of this world, I will make an attempt to explain this incredible real truth, hopefully in a way that makes sense and lays the foundation for answering the questions about our existence. As explained, all human beings exist in their perfect form and environment in the past, today, and in the future. They are unchangeable beings as eternal as the universe itself. Again, for want of a better term to describe them, I will refer to them as eternal humans who exist in their first estate, so that they are not confused with advanced human beings who exist in the second state of experience that we'll go over in just a minute. But oh, what a boring existence it would be if we lived in a never-changing world where all of our experiences were always the same. What joy would there be in being human in this type of a state? Oh, there's nothing boring about being an advanced human or being who we really are. Advanced humans, eternal humans, are continually experiencing new things, new adventures, and new experiences of their own choosing. They already know who they are, as they've been alive forever. But, and this is a big but, they do not know how they would react or act or what kind of experiences they would have if placed in a different environment in a completely different body without remembering, temporarily, who they really are. Keep in mind that the human being is simply a totality of individual experience while reacting within its environment with a physical body. For eternal human beings to have a new experience, something different than the perfect existence that they have always known forever, must occur. They must create a new human being. One who doesn't remember anything about its prior existence, or rather the fact that it is an unchangeable, eternal human being. And now, I must reveal what has never been revealed before, even to those who have studied the concepts of the marvelous work and a wonder. It is the piece of the puzzle that has been missing. The insight and knowledge that will help a person understand how advanced human beings have always been, yet they continue to create other human beings. Now remember, and this is important to keep in mind as one ponders the significance of this new real truth, all human experience is experienced in the confines of the human brain. And an advanced, eternal human brain has the capacity to store an infinite amount of information or better human experience. Now, how all these experiences become a reality will be discussed in another presentation that details the Human Reality book. An unchangeable and eternal human being with the power of the mind can create a completely new human experience. Therefore, our experience as a newly created advanced human is an event created and occurring in our true advanced eternal human mind. To create a new experience for an advanced human, the person has to become a completely new individual. The person has to become a newly created advanced human being. Newly created advanced human beings have no personality, have no humanity type, and have no experience recorded in their brain. A newly created advanced human must be allowed free will in order to become a different person than its creator, with a completely different set of circumstances. Once the newly created human has established its character, its humanity type, its propensities and desires, it then needs an experience where it can exercise the uniqueness of itself and learn to enjoy what it has become. It needs to become aware of itself. This is done in another experience where the newly created advanced human cannot remember that it is an eternal human, but still retains past experiences stored in the brain. The retention of stored experience allows the person to maintain consistent personality and individual desires. This other experience provides a contrast to what the person has become in order to help the person enjoy their existence. This other experience is called mortality, and it is what we're experiencing at this time. Now I know you're confused, so let me outline it exactly how it is. Each one of us, as a mortal upon this earth, in our past was a newly created advanced human being. Now in the present we have a mortal experience in which we can gain new experiences that contrast the perfect existence of our newly created character. After we have completed the course of mortality, we return again to being a newly created advanced human. This two-stage process, however, that occurs between a newly created advanced human's experience and their mortal experience is not the real truth about our existence as an eternal, unchangeable human being, our true self, and how we gain new experience. Remember, the experience of our true selves is an eternal continuum of the present experienced in the mind of an eternal, unchangeable human being. So, to hopefully clarify it all, let's take it from the top. Each one of us has always existed in our perfect human form in a perfect environment. Let's call this our first estate of experience. We exist in this first estate presently, have always existed in this state, and will exist in this state forever, so that we do not get bored and can experience all the wonderful possibilities of being human. We each chose to become a newly created person in order to experience a completely different life than the one that we were always used to, or the one we know what's going to happen day in and day out forever. We first had to become a newly created human being to effectuate and begin the new experience. So let's call this our second state of experience. Becoming a newly created human is the state of being that allowed us the opportunity to use free will to form a completely different identity and persona outside of our true self. We then became immortal in order to understand and enjoy the complexities and nuances and experience of this new person we created. Let's call this our third state of experience. And after we're done being immortal upon this earth, we will return to being a newly created human who just had a mortal experience. Then when we're completely satisfied with the experience as a newly created advanced human, and have arrived at a state where we know we will not change again, thus becoming bored with the experience, per se, we stop the experience, returning once again to our first estate, or our only true reality as a human being who has always existed in its perfect form and environment. Then, as eternal advanced human beings, we'll share our experiences with each other, laugh about the experiences, compare them, and then get ready for our next new experience, which will consist of becoming a newly created human being in a perfect environment without any recollection of who we actually are, which allows us to form a completely different personality and humanity type of our own choosing then entering a mortal experience where we learn to enjoy and appreciate the new person that we've become by having negative contrasting experiences that oppose the true nature of this new person. Yep, we exist in one eternal, continual round of human experience. As we go through each experience, we share in each other's experience. Some of us become advanced human mothers whose responsibility it is to foundationalize newly created advanced human beings and allow them free will to develop as they want. But most of us want the opportunity to have a new experience of which we do not know the outcome. Because if we knew the outcome, the experience would not be nearly as enjoyable and fulfilling. All in all, we share in each other's experiences, as we always have, as we do now, and as we always will in the future. How we transition from the first estate of experience to the second, and then to the third, and then back to the second, then to the third, without really leaving our first estate as eternal, unchangeable human beings, will be explained in more detail during the explanation and presentation of the book, Human Reality, Who We Are and Why We Exist. That broadcast will follow this introduction. What a marvelous and wonderful thing to have the knowledge that we have always existed and that we will always exist as advanced, eternal human beings having cool experiences that augment our joy and increase our happiness. It's wonderful to know that the universe exists for humans and that humans control everything therein. These real truths and others yet to be explained through this marvelous work and wonder give us a great sense of worth and hope. But if one thinks the people of this world are going to toss out all of their belief systems and accept this new concept, that one doesn't know the power and value of belief and what people gain from their current belief systems. Giving up any part of a belief system concedes that one is wrong, and no one likes to be wrong, folks. These real truths would not have had a chance of being considered at any time during the past. With the advent of computer and artificial technology and the way that they increase and improve year after year, our ability to consider things that otherwise might have seemed impossible in the past is increasing and improving. The real truths that are revealed through the marvelous work and wonder will be much more palatable to future generations. As an old saying goes, it's hard to teach an old dog a new trick. Or put another way, shouldn't try to put new wine in old bottles or you'll break the bottle. The real truth threatens the very core of human self-worth. If one holds value in what one believes to be true, and the real truth expresses the fact that all beliefs change over time, then one loses self-worth if one accepts this as real truth. Humans exist to increase and protect their personal value. Therefore, we all have a natural resistance to change, and it's all inherent in each one of us. But one who does not fight the possibility of being wrong has a greater potential of maintaining self-worth because that individual has already accepted the belief that he or she might be wrong, making the admission part of their self-worth and value. If we look at our history on this earth, it's not hard to see that most real truths are usually rejected when they are first introduced. As explained, the evidence of an actual real truth is that no matter how much we progress into the future, it is never proven wrong and it never changes. So let's take a brief look at what we know about our history upon this earth. If we take an honest look at the world's history, we wouldn't find much we could be proud of. What have we really accomplished that has led to the overall happiness and prosperity of the entire human race? Unfortunately, when it comes to history, we choose what we want to believe and make these beliefs, whether they're true or not, our personal truths. There are as many history books as there are historians. Each has a different idea and perspective about the past. Their speculations and opinions have become very burdensome when one sets out to unravel the prejudice of the historian from what actually happened. The fact is, it's impossible to know the real truth about our past by reading the written opinions of the world's historians. So here we stand, wondering what is true and what is not. since we seldom use our own common sense and intellect to figure things out on our own, owing to our desire to enjoy life and not worry about anything but self-fulfillment and pleasure, we rely on others to tell us the truth. Enter the world's belief systems to the rescue. These systems of belief define what we accept as history and what we do not. And if these systems of belief are flawed, then guess what, folks? What we believe to be true is highly susceptible to fallacy. Let's consider a few examples of our changing belief systems. At one time, seemingly civilized, God-fearing people embraced a philosophy that supported and condoned the use of dark-skinned humans to make money for themselves. This was called slavery. This philosophy didn't last through time, and the world eventually witnessed the darker-skinned race rise up to hold power and control over those whose ancestors once enslaved them. Based on the concept of never-changing real truth, a new philosophy emerged, that it is possible that all human races are equal in all things. This concept feels right to our common sense. Religion has changed drastically over time, proving in almost every instance to be the imagination of past generations, and these beliefs have become the mythologies of the present. A new religious philosophy is emerging that supports the idea that spirituality is nothing more than a personal truth that should never be forced upon another. This leads to a general sense of emotional liberation and increases tolerance and respect for human rights. This concept feels right to our common sense. Science has changed over the years and continues to change as its theories strain to keep up with advancing technology. Can anyone today imagine an intellectual world where almost everyone believed that the world was flat? As science progresses, and remember it is still a continually changing belief system, new technologies have the potential to increase a person's chances of prosperity and pleasure. It would be nice if all of these changes in our belief systems actually did bring equality, emotional liberation, and more prosperity to the world. Wouldn't it be nice? But the fact is, although they should and have for a small minority of the people of this world, the majority still suffer from the same symptoms that were caused by our antiquated belief systems. We still have rampant inequality. The use of prescription antidepressants proves that we are not emotionally liberated in the least, and the gap between the haves and have-nots of this world continues to widen, engulfing an even greater portion of the world's population. So why are all these perceived wonderful changes in our philosophy, religion, and science failing to improve the human race as a whole? Because the current belief systems are still changing and therefore are not unchangeable real truth. So now we're right back where we've always been upon this earth, contemplating our existence and wondering whether or not real truth actually exists. We are seeing wars and rumors of wars all over this world. The innocent are being slaughtered, justified as unavoidable casualties of war. Ironically, war plays a huge part in most major religious histories, touted as God-ordained and justified throughout the Bible, and also responsible for 2/3 of the stories in the world's most recent scripture, the Book of Mormon. War permeates every part of our existence and mortality. Why do we love war? Why do we love war so much? Look at the movies that entertain us, the video games that intrigue our children. The world lives by the sword, and if it continues to, then it is by that same sword that it shall die. A great beast like a leopard, and feet as the feet of a bear, and a mouth like a lion, rose up out of the sea and began to devour the earth. Oh, well, okay, enough of the dramatics. But that's a metaphoric way that a wise one once used to explain what's happening on earth. It's a way that people would rather believe that misery is caused to other humans, rather than the way that misery is actually devouring our world. No one wants to consider that they personally are participating in causing misery to other people. Let a fictional beast take the blame. Well, a wise one once used that metaphoric way to explain what's happening on the earth. I'm repeating this a little bit because it's very important to understand. I had a little bit of computer glitch, and so I'm going back and repeating what's been recorded. So bear with me, because what I said about the beast and the leopard, the feed the bear, and the mouth of the lion rose up out of the sea, that was used by a very wise person who understands what's happening on the earth. And it's a way that people would rather believe that misery is caused to other humans, rather than the way that misery is actually devouring our world. No one wants to consider that they personally are participating in causing misery to other people. Let a fictional beast take the blame. But folks, it's not a beast that's doing anything to our world. Money is devouring our world. The economic systems of the world, fueled by money and those who control it, are reshaping our world into societies of codependency, where the mantra exists, you can buy anything in this world for money. For without money, who can buy or sell in this world? But instead of creating more widespread abundance, it has engulfed whole nations and cultures and enslaved the people to the mark it is set by its standards of wealth, prosperity, and success. But what's going to happen to the world when one nation's economy starts to grow and eventually catches up with another great nation's economy? But then it grows even bigger. Guess I'll have to stop short of giving a verifiable prophecy here, but since I'm not a prophet, not in any sense of the word, I'll discuss this in the future as the events of this portend reveal themselves in our current experience. The fires of capitalism and greed spread throughout the world, and the smoke of their torment rises and blinds the whole world. None who allow this great beast to affect them have rest, not day nor night, as they worry about money and how they can get more to reach the mark of success set by the world. Through artificial means, by using alcohol, prescription drugs, and illegal ones, the world seeks a refuge from its own ignorance and the cause of its own misery. No one has come up with a solution. No one knows what to do. Throughout the history of this earth, the answers have seemed elusive, hidden somewhere, but we don't seem to be able to discover them on our own. Since we don't know what to do, and none of us are any better than any other, because no one has come up with any viable solutions, and all of our belief systems have failed us. Therefore, we have a personal excuse for our behavior. Why should we be held responsible for our actions during an experience upon this earth if none of us knows what to do? How can we then be held responsible? We have a viable excuse. But listen closely. When we chose to augment our experiences as an eternal, unchangeable human being by creating a new persona and a new life for ourselves, we didn't want to be left with any excuses. We didn't want to fail because of some excuse. We wanted an honest and fair probation of our humanity. We wanted to see what our personal We wanted to see what our personal potential was about. We wanted to know how we would fare in the new experience as a new person exercising free will. We didn't want or expect any excuses. So we planned our experience in mortality to provide the answers at some point along the way. Today, in June of the year we call 2012, is the point in our mortal experience where we are provided with the answers and solutions in order to take away the possibility of any excuse during this third estate of our experience. From this very moment, the world no longer has any excuses. And at the end of the day, at the end of our experience we know as our current reality, we'll all judge ourselves and base our personal happiness on this personal judgment. We all expect a fair probation, rather a fair test of our humanity and how we reacted and acted with our free will. And since we will realize then that we usually acted contrary to our true natures during our mortal experiences, this adds to our joy when we realize that, geez, I'm sure glad as an eternal, unchangeable human being. I'm not like that after all. We learn to appreciate our perfect existence. This marvelous working of wonder provides all the hidden answers. Foremost in its principal foundation, it has established a viable plan that will work with current economic systems to end poverty throughout the world. In association with the marvelous working of wonder, the Worldwide United Foundation represents the only plan that will work. I'm not going to go into specific detail about this plan at this time, but this I know. There is no philosopher, no religionist, no scientist of any field who has ever shown a flaw in this plan, nor ever will. None can give any viable excuse why the plan of the Worldwide United Foundation couldn't work in our present world with our current economic systems. The fact that it will work gives further empirical evidence of the real truths associated with the marvelous working of wonder. Now let's consider this work's other components. 7 books have been written, or are in the process of being written, and published that make up these other components. I'm calling the books associated with this work components because put together they offer the people of the world a better chance to learn things that they have never considered before. Yep, they help take away any excuses. And before the listener closes his or her mind to the rest of the message, because one might suppose that this is an advertisement for the books, listen very closely, world. Everything about the marvelous working of wonder, every single one of its components, books, anything, information, is free of charge. There are no strings attached, no obligations, nothing but free information, albeit the most important information the world has ever encountered. The book Human Reality, Who We Are and Why We Exist, along with its future addendum, will become the most widely read component. It transcends all of the customary and traditional belief systems that, again, have done nothing to solve our human problems. It is intended for all the people of the world, any who are looking for the answers to their existence. I mentioned a future addendum to this book. Its first edition is intended for the people of the earth as far as they have progressed intellectually. The world can only handle what the people can understand based on their current reality. Shortly, we'll discuss how the message of the marvelous working of wonder is delivered to the world. In short, the message is given according to the accepted beliefs of the masses, giving them a better chance, taking away their excuse, to open up their minds to understanding concepts of real truth. I'm not going to go into much detail about the books during this introductory broadcast. Each book has its own broadcast where we will detail each one, how it was written and why it was written, each addressing specific audiences, and each giving its own empirical evidence of the real truth and the veracity of the marvelous working of wonder. The Human Reality book is intended for those who are sick and tired of the current belief systems. It is intended to exceed all philosophies, religions, and scientific theories invented to answer the questions that these belief systems have failed to answer. There's another component of the marvelous working of wonder called the Light of the Moon, the plain and precious words of the ancient prophets. The major powers in this world are ostensibly religiously based on Scripture, mostly the Bible, or at least the leaders pretend to be in order to keep the believing masses on their side. But there's no book written about the real truth associated with the men, the so-called prophets, upon whose words and writings these major religions, and consequently world politics, are based. These religious founding fathers were quite different than what their followers believe. Their ancient messages, when deposed of traditional interpretation, give wonderful insight into our human experience and the questions that we have. And listen up, all you religions of the world. You're all wrong, very wrong, and are causing the majority of human misery. One of the religious works that has stumped scholars for centuries is the New Testament book of Revelation. No one has ever offered a complete and understandable explanation of the book. As further empirical evidence of the marvelous working of wonder, the author of Revelation, he's known as John the Beloved in some religious circles, has supplied another component of the marvelous working of wonder and given the answers to the metaphors and symbolism he used to compose the book of Revelation. Biblical scholars have never known its true meaning and purpose. But now these things are revealed in 666, the mark of America, seed of the beast, the Apostle John's New Testament revelation unfolded. It not only unfolds the mystery of the biblical book of Revelation, but it offers unprecedented answers and solutions to our human problems. See, the Bible was the major standard by which the current nations of the world were established. It is the most widely read book ever written. Its influence on our mortal experience was never challenged until the newly founded United States of America offered people the freedom to believe according to the dictates of each person's conscience. With that freedom, a book that challenged the Bible's supreme authority and presented a different idea about God's relationship with humans, as the religious suppose, was published. This book was published as the Book of Mormon. Mormonism and its alleged founder, Joseph Smith Jr., played a major role in our moral experience by helping take away many of the excuses. This will be explained. That's never been explained before, as we detail his book in another broadcast. As the world is faced today with the possibility of the first Mormon U.S. president, one of the most powerful men in the world, and as Mormons permeate every fiber of society in subtle but powerful ways, the people of the world deserve to understand the real truth about Mormonism and its purpose. Joseph Smith's authorized and official biography is just what it claims to be. There has never been a book written, nor shall there ever be, that presents Joseph Smith and Mormonism in their true light. The book that challenged the Bible, the only book that ever has, the Book of Mormon, cannot complete its intended purpose without its other sealed and most important part, the sealed portion of the Book of Mormon. This book complements its unsealed counterpart and presents the world with all the information it needs to understand and challenge the Bible. And most importantly, it has the power to transform a Bible-believing mind into a more humane thinking pattern. It's one of the Marvelous Work and Wonders' most powerful books and is intended for those whose hearts and minds are hardened and closed by religion. See, this Joseph Smith character knew all the real truths that are part of this Marvelous Work and Wonder, every single one, even down to the technology that would one day be used to present this work to the world. But in his day, the people would have killed him if he even mentioned any of these real truths, like they did, eventually. So before he died, he incorporated many of these real truths into a symbolic and metaphoric representation that no one has ever been able to figure out. It's what the Mormons call their temple endowment, and it is seen millions of times every year in Mormon temples found throughout the world, without the people having the slightest idea what it really represents. To give further empirical evidence to this work, more especially to the LDS Mormon people who need it the most, and establish the fact that his character is also personally involved in this work, Joseph has given the explanation of all the symbolism and metaphors he used in creating the LDS Temple Endowment. There's a lot more about the significance of Mormonism and what it offers for experience as an eternal human going through the stages of mortality. This is discussed during the detailed broadcast of each of these relevant books. I'll not say any more at this time, but it would behoove the world to know and understand the belief system that might be guiding one of the most powerful men and nations in the world. Again, my name is Christopher. I only go by my first name, and I am the only true messenger of this work upon this earth, the only one who is the authorized liaison between those who know the answers and the venue in which they have chosen to give these answers to the world. This venue is the Marvelous Work and Wonder. Now, it would only be fair that the world has access to a published account of my life and how I came to be this messenger. My autobiography is the final component of the Marvelous Work and Wonder. Now, one of the most logical, yet probably the most important question the world might ask is, what makes you, Christopher, so different from all the others who claim to know the truth? Why should we believe you over any of the others who are making similar claims? That's a real good point to consider. What is the difference between a true messenger, which I claim to be, and a false one, which I claim that everybody else out there is? Well, Let's forget about the messenger as a person for a moment and consider an age-old brain teaser that might help point out some of the important differences. Let's suppose that we are imprisoned in a small empty room without any windows and only two identical looking doors. Let's number the doors, door number 1 and door number 2. Our only option to leave the confines of the small empty room is to choose one of the doors, but we can only choose one of them. Behind one of the doors is a long drawn-out torture that ends in death. Behind the other is freedom and real truth. Left alone by ourselves, the choice would cause us a great amount of stress. We know that we do not know which door is which. If only there was someone to help us make the choice. So here comes this guy telling us that he knows which door we should choose. But then another guy comes along and he tells us the same thing. We know that they know, or at least they claim to know, and we know one specific thing about each of the messengers. One always tells the truth, so we'll call him the true messenger. And we also know that the other guy always lies, so we'll call him the false messenger. Now here's the conundrum, or our problem in distinguishing which guy to believe and which one to trust. We don't know which one to believe because we don't know which one always tells the truth and which one always lies. They both look the same, they both act the same. They both tell us that they know which door we should choose. But how do we know which one to believe? And to further complicate our dilemma, we are limited to asking only one question to either of the two. We only have one question that we can ask. What question should we ask? If one would think about the situation long enough, using logic and common sense, one would conclude that the only proper question to ask either of the two is, what would the other guy say is the door to real truth? Because it wouldn't matter to which one we posed the question. If we ask the true messenger, he is going to tell us that the other guy would say that the real truth is behind door number 1, because he knows that the other guy always lies. Keep in mind that freedom is behind door number 2. The true messenger is going to intentionally mislead us according to the established fact that he knows the false messenger is lying. He's going to try to help us. Use our common sense. If we ask the false messenger, he would tell us that the other guy would say that the real truth is also behind door number 1, because he knows that the other guy always tells the truth, and the false messenger is going to always lie about what the true messenger is going to say. So both their answers are the same. We might not know which one is the true messenger, but they do. The real one knows who he is, and the other one knows that he's not, but lies and pretends to be. The key to finding the door to real truth is to choose the door that neither one mentions. We have to reject both answers given in order to find real truth, and depend on our logic and common sense to figure out what is right for ourselves. We cannot trust not even the true messenger unless, and this is important, our common sense and logic proves to us that he is a true messenger and that the other is false. But this is certainly not possible by listening to either one of them. We must depend on ourselves. True messengers are forced to use what the world accepts as truth, most of which are falsehoods, in order to guide us to the real truth. They are forced to use the lies told by the false messengers, which the people have accepted as their truths, to help people find the truth for themselves. People must learn to trust themselves and their own logic, because they often cannot trust who is telling them about the truth. A true messenger does not tell a person that he or she is wrong, but helps us use our common sense to learn for ourselves. There is no better teacher or student than our own mind, for it is only in our mind where we accept what we believe to be true anyway. But the true messenger must work with, not what he knows is real truth, but with what those for whom the message is intended know and accept as truth. Consider the following way that this real truth is presented in a religious prose. Listen to this. But behold, The Jews were a stiff-necked people, and they despised the words of plainness and killed the prophets, and sought for things that they could not understand. Wherefore, because of their blindness, which blindness came by looking beyond the mark, they must needs fall. For God hath taken away his plainness from them, and delivered unto them many things which they cannot understand, because they desired it. And because they desired it, God hath done it, that they may stumble. Now, that's a religious prose for those of you who like that type of belief system. But who could imagine that God would give the people something that would make them stumble? But they desired it. Thus, a true messenger gives the people what they want according to their beliefs. And when the people stumble and find that what they believe does not answer their questions or solve their problems, the people then become more apt, according to their free will, to finally consider the real truths from a true messenger. Well was it said, when the people are ready, the messenger will come. Because an honest person knows that he or she does not know, it's a human propensity to suppose that someone else might know. We spend all of our lives searching for the answers within ourselves, only to be disappointed by our inability to make sense of it all. So we seek for answers outside of ourselves by listening to others who we perceive might be smarter than we are, or at least have somehow figured out the answers. Once we admit that we do not know, we begin our search for the answers anywhere we can find them. Throughout our history, many people have claimed that they knew the answers to our questions. Not that any of these really knew the answers, but in seeking for personal self-worth, they made the claim. Let me explain why this happens and how a false messenger begins. As long as there have been people alive on planet Earth, they have questioned their existence. They often gather together and contemplate the same types of questions. Why am I here upon this insignificant planet, spinning around in space? How did this planet get here? Is there a purpose for my existence? If so, what is it? Is death the end of this existence? If death is the end, then shouldn't I be taking advantage of life? Is this life the only chance I get to experience consciousness? What creates consciousness? Why do I randomly and effortlessly dream when I'm not conscious? Why do humans appear more aware of themselves than other animals? Do animals ponder and question their existence as humans do? If animals do not question their existence, then why not? Is there a higher, more intelligent power than that of a human being? How can human beings have the capacity for such great love and compassion, and yet at the same time create such misery for each other? Does life exist elsewhere in the universe? Why is peace and happiness so temporary and often elusive? And what exactly is consciousness anyway? So a guy comes along and realizes that a group of his peers has these types of questions that they don't have the answers to. He realizes that the people have placed a considerable value on their questions. They want to know the answers, and they would give up a lot to know them. The guy doesn't know any more than anyone else, but realizes how important it is to his peers to find the answers. Whether he is simply a nice guy or tries to be, who wants to help his peers and give them some hope about themselves, or his motives are more self-centered in that he wants to increase his self-worth among his peers, whatever his motivation, he begins to invent answers to their questions. But in order to make his answers feel right to the people, he is forced to base them on what the people already know, or rather what they think they know. In the beginning of our experience in mortality, the things that people knew for sure were those things that they could observe with their senses. They had, for example, empirical evidence of the forces of nature that were much more powerful than they were. They saw how the natural world worked, how animals dominated each other and lived in their natural environments. They observed the beauty of the natural world and their own interactions with it. These people knew what real truths in their reality could not be questioned or challenged. So what did the false messengers do? They took what the people knew about their world, what they accepted, what they could observe and sense without doubt, and incorporated these things into answers that the people would accept. Thus the first belief systems were largely based on the natural world. And these false messengers combined what the people could see in nature with their desire to know the answers to their human questions, and created all sorts of different belief systems. Before long, people begin to divide themselves throughout the four corners of the world, largely based on these different belief systems. The false messengers who were responsible for the creation of these belief systems might have, for example, combined the natural world with the human world to create some of the answers. Others fashioned their belief systems into one that was entirely based on nature itself, thus incorporating the powers of nature into human reality. And there were belief systems that combined simple humans with supernatural imagery, changing the forces of nature into human form. That's where you get Poseidon and Zeus and all those characters. And then there are those who acknowledge the power of humankind and believe that human beings had all the power they needed to come up with their own answers. This kind of belief system was the most advantageous to the false messengers. It was easier to control the people and what they thought when the people believed in the power of the messenger. If the people could be convinced that the messenger had omnipotent power even over the laws of nature, then they no longer had to worry about the answers to their questions or value the responsibility of looking for the answers themselves. They could enjoy life and pay their messenger for the answers in money and adoration. As humans begin to develop and learn more about their ability to control nature and its environs, they begin to place more and more faith in the power of the human being rather than nature, and therefore the ability of their human messengers to answer their questions, leading to modern times when the majority of people who are looking for answers have placed their full trust in other humans. True messengers cannot prove to the people that their message is the real truth if the people have already placed their trust in what they believe and think that they know for a surety. True messengers must work within the falsehoods that the people accept as truth to help the people feel the comfort of using their common sense and logic to find their way to real truth out of falsehoods. Now back to our example for a moment. Confronted with two different doors and two different messengers, the people can only deal with what they know for sure. They know that the only way for them to escape their confinement in the small room is for them to go through one of the doors. And they know that they do not know which door is the right one. They know that both of the messengers know the truth about the doors, at least they claim to, but that one of them is a liar and the other one tells the truth. Based on what the people know, the true messenger's desire is to help them make the right decision based upon what they already believe. He will never convince the people that the other guy is a liar because the people already know that one of them is a liar, and how could they possibly know that the true messenger isn't the one lying? The true messenger helps people use their common sense, utilizing what the people know for sure to help them find real truth. In the brain teaser example I used, the people are forced to use their common sense to figure out the right question to ask, since they only get to ask one. And then the true messenger uses his knowledge that the other guy is lying and that the people don't know which one is telling the truth to answer them and guide them to the right door. That's what this work, the marvelous work and a wonder, is all about. It is the way that real truth is presented to the world, the only way by which the people might have a chance, therefore eliminating their excuses, to know things that have been hidden since the foundation of the world. My name is Christopher. I am your true messenger. The marvelous work and the wonder exists to help deliver the real truth to you, my fellow eternal and always equal human beings. Welcome. This presentation is number 2 of 9 presentations introducing the marvelous work and a wonder to the world. I mentioned during the introduction to the marvelous work and a wonder that the book Human Reality, Who Are We and Why We Exist, along with its future addendum, will become the most widely read component of this work. This book transcends all of the customary and traditional belief systems that, again, have done nothing to solve our human problems or answer our human questions. This book is intended for all the people of the world, especially those who are looking for the answers to their questions about their own personal existence. I mentioned a future addendum to this book. This first edition that has been published is intended for the people of the earth as far as they have progressed intellectually. because the world can only handle what its people can understand based on their current reality. The intent of the first edition of the Human Reality Book is to allow the world to catch up in its experience so that the people will be better prepared to understand the real truths about our existence as eternal human beings. As mentioned, most people, in protection of their personal value and ego, reject change. Nobody wants to believe that everything that one believes about his or her human existence is not actually real truth. As the marvelous work in a wonder challenges current belief systems, more help will be needed from advancing technology and intelligence in order to establish empirical evidence of its truths. Patiently, I like to call it the patience of the saints, we have to wait for a good portion of the present belief systems to leave our world and take with them their antiquated prejudices, their narrow views, and basically everything that they have done to the world to put it in the state that it is. Many of the older generations don't have much good to say about the upcoming generations. But if the world retained the same morals, the same virtues, and the same morality as its quote-unquote old dogs, or its old bottle of wines, who are the ones who rule and reign and greatly influence our world, our progression towards real truth would be greatly stifled. But we should learn to have patience with our fellow humans who know very little about their true existence as equally eternal human beings. And furthermore, the fear of change is that their personal values will be challenged. They have an excuse for what they believe. As mentioned, the real truth threatens their current personal values. It compromises their ego and compromises everything that they have ever believed about themselves, or at least what they were taught by others about themselves through their accepted belief systems. See, the real truth exists like a sharp two-edged sword that has the power to slice through our egos and open up a path for greater knowledge and understanding. How this is done was presented in the introduction to The Marvelous Work in a Wonder in presentation number 1. Can you imagine, for example, telling a person who has dedicated years of their experience upon this earth to a certain career, then fostering and expanding that career in order to take advantage of all the opportunities that life has to offer? Can you imagine telling them that all of the experience was for nothing? Personally, I know a man who dedicated many years of his life in becoming a doctor. He was a podiatrist, a foot doctor. I know that he saved vigorously for his retirement as he worked hard all throughout his life to establish things upon this earth for himself and his family. He sold this practice and was getting ready to live the good life when he was working upon his roof and fell off and died. It's a true story, and similar scenarios happen many, many times every day upon this earth as humans proceed to live out their reality, believing that what they're doing is of great worth, only to have it end at any moment. From this man's personal perspective, was life worth living? What a travesty to experience life in this way. It appears that all there is to look forward to is death. At least so it would seem to those who only see this world from their current perspective. The real truth is, there is no such thing as death as we consider it from the standpoint of our reality as advanced, eternal human beings. And it's from this perspective, that of a newly created advanced human being, that the Human Reality Book was written. Let's review for a moment what was introduced as the 3 stages of our human experience. First, we have always existed, we exist today, and we will always exist as an eternal human being. This is our real, true self. And everything that we experience, whether it be a memory of our past or what we are experiencing currently, it is always done in our present conscious mind, so that we don't get bored with our existence, and to augment our joy of being an eternal human being, we have the ability to enter an experience which can be best understood as a virtual world that is generated by a highly advanced computer program that allows our minds to interact with the program in a suspended physical state, but continually exist as an eternal human being. While our eternal brains interact with the program, it does not allow us to have any memory of who we are. This permits us to develop into a completely different free will character, a new person, outside of our true selves. This then becomes our second estate, or the experience of being a newly created advanced human being. And our third estate is the one that we are experiencing now upon this earth as mortals. The Human Reality book deals with our experiences only in the second and third estates. The reason for this is because the newly created human who we have become, outside of our true selves, is the only experience that concerns us as eternal human beings at this moment, while we are interacting with the program that allows us to have the new experience. Furthermore, in order for each of us to personally benefit from the experience of interacting with the program, we need to immerse ourselves, all of our concentration and mental efforts, into the program and its overall purpose. And the program's only intent is to provide us with the experience of being newly created advanced human beings, and then thereafter to experience mortality. Within the parameters of the program, the mortal state enhances the newly created advanced human state. And that's all the knowledge, that's the hokey pokey that the world is to have, that is now revealed through the Human Reality book. I know there are still many who are confused, and it is our intention that by the end of this presentation, the world will have no reason or excuse why it shouldn't understand our real human existence. Let's briefly discuss our first estate as eternal humans. And I call the experience estates because although all of our experiences take place in our advanced eternal human brain, which is only one place to our conscious mind, during each estate of experience, each one takes place in a different location and environment. For want of a better term, we can call these environments worlds. We have existed, do exist, and will always exist in our first estate. It is an eternal world. The location of our existence is an actual place with an environment that is perfectly suitable and sustainable, yet unchangeable, for the best human existence possible. Instead of being an actual planet, it is a plane of existence that extends infinitely in all directions. Just as we cannot perceive that the world is round from our local perspective upon this earth during our current reality, as it appears to us to be flat, an eternal human does not perceive its environment as being round, but a never-ending environment existing on a plane. If an eternal human were to walk forever, the being would never reach an end of running into other humans who have always existed and who have continual, multi-directional experiences infinitely forever. It is here in our first estate where our brains are wirelessly connected to an advanced program of incredible energy that allows us to interact with and record the second and third estates of our experience. And as we go through each estate, the program works with our eternal brain and manages the amount of energy that is transferred and how the energy is transferred in order to create the experience. All memories and knowledge that we have as an eternal human being are stored in one part of our eternal, limitless brain. During our second estate, the program blocks this energy, or rather manages it, allowing us to develop into a newly created advanced human being, a completely different person from who we actually are. Then, when we go through our third state in what we perceive as mortality, the program manages the transference of energy even further, thus enabling the eternal, limitless mind to think that it is mortal and store experiences as if it is. When the experiences are complete, and we discontinue the use of the advanced program that we are, for want of a better way to explain it, plugged into, all of the experience will then become part of our conscious and ever-present reality as an eternal human being. And because of the powers of our true eternal brains, the very moment that we recall any experience in our past, we will relive the experience as if it were happening again in our present state. Thus our existence, as has been explained, as an eternal human, no matter what experience we are recalling of our past, instantly becomes the current experience of the present. As eternal humans, when we want to recall a past experience, our brains are able to find the memory, make it a conscious thought, and then we relive the experience as we recorded it, utilizing all of our senses in reliving the memory exactly like we experienced the event in the environment in which we first had it. Our real eternal brain is awesome. I mentioned that after another 10 years or so, we will publish the Human Reality Addendum, or the second and final edition. This will reveal the real truth about our first estate, and be the final explanation of all human reality and experience. But since this is not a presentation of this further component of the marvelous work and a wonder, we'll concentrate our discussions to the second and third estate of our experience as revealed in the Human Reality book. So that there is no excuse, let me once again explain as clearly as I can the entire real truth about our existence. We exist as unchangeable humans who are physically similar in that we all have individual perfect bodies, although unique to the individual, that react to and act within an environment that allows for the best human experience possible. To add to our experience as an unchangeable human being, therefore adding to our experience of joy and happiness, we allow our minds to enter a highly advanced program that has the ability to create the new experience. This program operates, although much more advanced, similar to the wireless technology that we are used to today. It has the ability to allow different users to access, download, and participate with each other within the parameters of the advanced technology. We share in each other's experience by allowing our mind to access the same program that others are accessing to have their new experience. This occurs within our minds while existing in an eternal world, which is better described as a never-ending plane of existence. Yes, we have eternal relationships with these equal but individual human beings, and as we interact with others, we form bonds and relationships of experience throughout each of the different estates of experience. Once these bonds are created, they connect us to the other person's experience, or to them forever. The program first allows us to create a whole new world where we will become a completely different person as a newly created advanced human being. Then we experience various mortal incarnates that provide many different types of experiences. When we have advanced within the program to a point where we have nothing further to gain from the experience of becoming a newly created human being, a whole another person outside of ourselves, we can then leave the program, and our memories of the experience join an infinite amount of eternal experiences that will always be with us and which we will always enjoy. And that, folks, is the hokey pokey. Now, I know still that it is such a new concept, but it's a concept that will answer all human questions But even so, I'm going to reiterate it throughout this broadcast, throughout this presentation, and I will be available again every week on the radio to be able to clarify these things and answer people's questions. But again, pertaining to the Human Reality book, our only concern is our present reality. So let's talk about our second estate, or the experience of becoming an entirely different person than who we really are. From our present experience, we realize that DNA patterns that we receive from our parents can shape personality types, and that we can inherit other genetically influenced traits. And with the advent of cloning, the relationship dynamic of being a parent and passing on physical traits will not be limited to only a male and female, but will include same-sex relationships and single parents who only use their own DNA to create a whole new person. Our parents influence our physical brain during mortality, because the brain in which a person's experience takes place and is stored was constructed from a blueprint of sorts that was provided by our equally mortal parents. These inherited genetic traits do not allow us to take full responsibility of making a personal free-willed choice of who we became as mortals, at least so it seems. Therefore, it appears that we are not solely responsible for what our genes provide us. Also, our third estate's environments do not provide equal opportunity for everyone to have the same opportunities to develop. Those people, the majority of the world's population, who are born with limited opportunities do not develop the same on an emotional level, whether that level be good for us or bad for us, as those who are born into a world of no need or want. Therefore, our mortal environments also influence who we become during our mortal life. In our third estate, our capabilities, or rather our free will, is limited and controlled by these two factors. Again, who our parents are and what mental and physical traits we inherit from them, and in what environment we experience life. This fact seems to take away free will and make us puppets of circumstance. However, according to how things really are in the universe, when it pertains to human beings, none of us are puppets, and we each control all aspects of our experience. Yes, every bit of our experience is controlled by each individual. Free will is the eternal component of our true nature. We experience what we want to experience. Yes, but this contradicts everything you just said, Christopher, about our mortal existence being a product of genetically inherited factors and our environment. How can we be personally responsible for who we are if we are subject to the abilities and limitations that our parents gave us and the environment in which we live? This is why our second estate is set up differently than how it is here in mortality. In our second estate, there are no inherited genetics that take place, and we exist in a perfect environment, an environment of no need, that provides all opportunities equally to all individuals to develop how they desire according to their free will. The program that establishes the environment in our second estate creates a similar environment to the perfect environment in which we exist as eternal humans. This is necessary because the body in which the newly created human will develop and become a completely new person cannot be influenced or manipulated by the environment, or the newly created person will become a product of the environment instead of the product of free will and personal choice. The body provided for the new person must also be of such a nature that it is not influenced or manipulated within the environment in which it is created. Thus, the body and the environment in which it exists allow only the person to determine what the newly created being becomes. It allows free will. And it is only through exercising free will that our true self, as eternal human beings, unaware that we're going through a new experience, can control the person who we become. If there were not free will, then we would have no control over the person inside the parameters of the program we are participating in to create the new experience. Here's how we became a newly created advanced human being. First, let's talk about the person who creates the body in the second estate for the newly created person. After going through the process of becoming a new person as a newly created advanced human, and then experienced various mortalities where the individual lived as a male and a female, some choose to remain in the second estate of experience as an advanced human mother in order to raise newly created humans. This person is always female and can continue the experience of being an advanced mother as long as she wants. She is always female because of the way she is required to raise, or better foundationalize, the newly created person. She is responsible for the establishment of the new person's ability to use the physical senses to react to the new environment. And, for example, she will need breasts that provide the way that a newly created person's taste buds are established or foundationalized. The advanced mother's breast milk contains various components that interact with the newly created infant's taste receptors that ensure the proper foundationalization of taste. So if a human has breasts, I suppose during our current reality here, we call her a female. Thus, all advanced mothers are female. She also has all the other benefits that a female has over a male. Males have nothing to do with the foundationalization of a new human being. And this, of course, is brought out more within the context of the Human Reality book. The mother uses her own free will to choose what the physical body of the new person will look like in the second estate. Now, I need to explain something here that I forgot to explain. And that is, I talked about how a newly created person, that an advanced human being, I'll go on to explain a little bit more, but I need to explain that there are advanced human mothers that deal within the second estate that are actually eternal human beings that chose that role for a certain purpose. In other words, as an eternal human being, you can enter the second estate of experience already as an eternal mother, or as a male, or as a governor. And these subjects I'm not going to dwell on at this time. But in other words, we have the ability, for example, to enter the game, the experience of being a newly created human being, one that does not have free will, as a character that performs a specific role within that world. And all these questions and things will come up in the future, but the addendum in the future will deal with those things, so I'm not going to concentrate on that at this time. Fact is, that if a person goes through mortality and decides after not through, even as a newly created person, you know at that point whether you want to be a woman or not, a female advanced mother. And then you enter mortality, go through experiences, and then you stay in that realm, in that estate, and continue that role until pretty much you get tired of it. Okay? So anyway, the mother used her own free will to choose what the physical body of the new person will look like in the second estate. The body is created without gender, so that the person can choose with its free will its own gender, if the person even wants a gender, because along with a gender, there are certain responsibilities that most people would not choose for themselves. And again, those are outlined in the Human Reality book and defined as the humanity types that we choose. The newly created human has a perfect human body similar to the ones we have as eternal advanced humans. I say similar because the bodies provided during the second estate are not exactly like our eternal bodies. We did not go through any process of development and growth in our first estate. We are unchangeable human beings who are exactly how we've been in the past and how we'll always be. But to develop into a completely different person with a completely different set of characteristics, propensities, and desires, the energy levels that exist in our brain in our first estate, where the actual experience is taking place, are completely but temporarily cut off from the area of our brain where the new experience will be recorded as an advanced, newly created human being. That way, there's no influence whatsoever coming from any part of our brain except where the new experience is forming. Now, I'm going to explain this and illustrate this in the video to clarify it even further. In our true state, as an unchangeable being, we know everything about our environment and how to act or react to this environment. In simple terms, we knew how to manipulate the environment according to our individual desires. To use some terms that'll help clarify this, we knew how to run without ever having to crawl and then learning how to walk. We've always known how to manipulate our bodies to our to our environment. We've always known how to manipulate our bodies to the environment in an eternal world. But a newly created person doesn't know anything about its environment and how to manipulate it for its benefit. The way that the new person acts and reacts to the environment is something that will be developed along with the new person's other individual and unique characteristics. Therefore, the newly created human has to be an infant first and learn on its own how to live within its new environment. And since it has no stored instructions of how to act in or react to its new environment, it is provided with another human who knows all there is to know about the environment and is there to help the infant learn on its own. This is another of the responsibilities of an advanced human mother. Because the newly created human has never been a human before, according to the fact that all of its memories are blocked and it has a completely blank slate on which to create its new persona, it wouldn't have the slightest idea of what it wanted to look like. But the mother does. She chooses what the physical body is going to look like based on her own experience and her own desires. And she never creates two bodies that look the same. Again, because the newly created human doesn't know anything about gender, and it was created in order to become an individual of its own choosing, the new physical body is ungendered. It's neither a male nor a female. Created in the exact image of the eternal humans who wanted the experience. Eternal humans in their equality are, of course, equal. This means that they are ungendered. If one was male and one was female, then they wouldn't be equally endowed with the same abilities and potentials. Females would have a much greater advantage over males. Being male or female is exclusively limited to our experience in our second and third estates. Becoming one gender or another is a way in which we individually choose how we want to react to our environment. Females have different bodies, which in turn act and react differently than male bodies. It's a pretty simple concept to understand. Our advanced mothers help foundationalize our humanity and give us all the nurturing we need to become a human being. They are the most important person in our existence during the second estate of our experience. And our free will, which is promoted by our advanced mothers in our second state, is the most important part of becoming a newly created human. Now, we need to spend some time discussing the real truth about free will, or the agency and power to react to an environment without being compelled by need or fate. This is such an important concept. I'm going to try to clarify it the best I can. Free will creates the inequality that we do not experience as eternal human beings. Free will allows the possibility of a new experience that we could not have had otherwise. In our first estate, as eternal human beings, we do not have free will because we seemingly free will, and let me explain this. Because we are eternally unchangeable. Therefore, our will is going to be the same today as it was in the past, as it will continue to be presently, and as it will be in the future. the very essence of our eternal nature actually negates free will. Eternal existence cannot exist where a person makes a free, specific choice in response to something in one's environment, because the eternal person has always made the same choices forever. And furthermore, since the environment provides in perfection all that a human needs to exist forever in a perfect state, the environment only provides choices of perfection. There are no other choices available from which to choose with free will. The inequality that exists in our second estate, however, establishes a situation where our individual free will might come up against the free will of another and conflict with that person. Or it can be said that our free will creates the inequality of our second estate. Therefore, our second estate accounts for and allows this by establishing different worlds, planets, where people exist according to the comfort level that they experience in expressing their free will with others. The people cannot exist on an eternal plane like we do as eternal human beings, because there would then be no isolation from each other on a plane as there is in separate locales of environment upon planets. And to further ensure that free will is protected and allowed, a government is set up during the second estate that oversees human interaction with each other. The government is not a democracy, because the rights of the minority are just as important as the rights of the majority. The government is ran by a righteous dictator who is specifically created to fulfill this important position of power and authority. Now, this also is detailed and explained in the Human Reality book. And because free will is allowed and protected in the second estate, there are limitations placed on the abilities and potential of each newly created human according to the use of the person's free will and how the use of their free will affects the free will of others. The development of newly created humans in our second estate of experience has specific laws that are only applicable to that estate. These laws are based entirely on the purpose for the second estate, and that purpose is the exercising of free will and the eventual joy that each person receives in becoming a new individual with the ability to exercise free will. To recap what free will is, in order to help us understand the big difference between our first and second estates, both which are experienced in a perfect human environment, let me reiterate the real truth of the matter of free will. The correct definition of free will is the individual power to act and react to an environment without being compelled by need or fate. In other words, free will is negated when what we do is determined and manipulated by our past, present, or future. In other words, we are not free if we know what action we are going to take and are compelled by this knowledge to take it. And we are not free if we are compelled to act a certain way because something in our environment doesn't give us any other choice. As eternal and perfect humans existing in our first estate, we know exactly how we are going to act in the future because we acted the same way to our environment yesterday, and we would do the same today as we always have forever. So in this sense, as advanced eternal human beings, we do not have free will. But it limits the joy we can receive from existence. Simply put, if as eternal and perfect humans we didn't have the opportunity to use the advanced program of experience to create a new character for ourselves, we get pretty bored with our existence. In our second estate, we begin the process of establishing a foundation for our free will. In other words, we become a completely new person that can exercise free will. And in our third estate, we exercise the potential of our free will in an environment where we are free. But the free will that we exercise is completely unrestricted. Now, the Human Reality book details more of this I'm just going over it briefly here. I know it might be confusing, and again, that's why I'm going to be available every week on the radio for people to call in and ask these questions. But now, we're back to the contradiction that I mentioned earlier about our free will being restricted in mortality in our third estate as a result of our genetics and our environment. It's a contradiction because it is a real truth that our free will is complete and unconditional all through our mortality, as it was during our development as a newly created advanced human in our second estate. We can do whatever we want here upon this earth. No one can actually force us to do what we do not want to do. Now is the time to understand another real truth in order to resolve this contradiction. While existing as newly created advanced human beings in our second estate, we choose the conditions, timing, and the parameters of the environment in which we want to experience our mortal lives. We are able to do this because during the eons of time we exist as newly created advanced human beings, we are able to observe many different mortal experiences had by other humans. And as advanced humans, we have the intelligence to gather a good sense of what our life is going to be like during certain conditions of our third estate. Therefore, it was our free will as newly created advanced human beings that placed us in certain environments with certain parents upon this earth. To understand how these choices of mortality are made, we need to consider a few more details of how we developed in a perfect world as an advanced, newly created human being, or how we dealt with our second estate. There's a lot about our second estate that is covered in the Human Reality book, of course. It was published to help us have a better idea of what our existence was like during this experience. It would take me hours to cover all the concepts revealed through its pages, but I would like to cover a couple more points during this introductory presentation. Introduction to the book, anyway. In our second estate, we are not aware of our free will because we haven't experienced anything that opposes our perfect existence. In other words, we do not experience joy because we have yet to experience any sort of pain. We developed into a completely unique individual, each with a unique and personal perspective of the self. Being raised in a perfect environment allowed us to gain incredible self-esteem and value for ourselves. We actually think, and are correct on many levels, that the universe revolves only around us. There is nothing in the second estate that challenges our self-centered and egotistical perceptions. Therefore, we don't recognize our self-value as being anything than what it is, the way it's always been, perfect. And having this perfect perception of ourselves, not only do we not appreciate who we have become, but we have no appreciation for anyone else, who are just as perfect in their self-centered and egotistical perceptions as we are. We realize that to test ourselves, or rather prove to ourselves that our self-worth and value was what we thought it was, we had to enter another state of existence where we could be challenged and tested. During mortality, our self-centered and egotistical perceptions of ourselves are challenged for the betterment and enjoyment of our eternal existence. This is where the third state of existence comes into play. This is when we need some further clarity about our second estate, the one we experienced before we became mortal, and how we experience our third estate as a newly created advanced human. Again, all experience occurs in our advanced and eternal brain. Through the stages of the advanced program of experience, for want of a better way to explain it, we are presently and are always living in our first estate. We experience our second estate in a body very similar to our true nature as an eternal human being. And within this realm, we are experiencing our third estate in the confines of the mind of the newly created person we became during the second estate. At least so it seems, and will always seem to us as we go through the experience of existence in the second and third estates. And the experience of our second estate, along with what we are experiencing in our third estate, occurs in the present, in the confines of our eternal mind. Mortality is experienced in the mind of a newly created advanced human. The experience is generated by the same program that is generating the experience in our true self's brain as an eternal human being. The energy allowed by the program regulates the level of energy, thus our physical and mental abilities differently in each estate. Of course, as we experience our third estate here upon this earth, there seems to be no other experience of reality than that which we have presently in our conscious mortal state. But what about our unconscious mortal state? Do we not dream? And in these dreams, do we not believe as we are dreaming that the experience is real? We do not recognize it as not being real until we wake up. But then we realize that the dream was not real, nor will it continue to be part of our human experience unless, of course, we dwell on the dreams and then change our reality to conform to them. A dream provides us with empirical evidence that it is possible to experience something in our brain that is not part of our current reality, but appears to be real. During the dream, we can feel emotion. We can feel pain, sorrow, fear, joy, elation, and all other kinds of things, emotional aspects, during a dream. Some of us can even fly, and some of us can stand underwater indefinitely and seemingly transcend the laws of nature in our dreams. But are our dreams real? If we could remember them precisely as they took place, we would have to concede that they seem to be real and that they provide an experience in which our physical brain reacts to an environment that existed solely in the confines of the dream itself. We have experiences in dreams with other humans. We have an experience with them, and the experience feels real. We interact with them, and they interact with us. The experiences feel real. But are they? If we ask anyone from our dream experience if they recall being a part of our dream exactly how we remember them to be, the answer will inevitably be no. The experience that we have in the first estate involve interactions with other humans who are equally endowed like our true self with the same potential and abilities. There are no limitations placed on any of the humans living in a perfect environment with a perfect human body. That includes the perfect human brain. There is no eternal human being who is more powerful than another. There is no inequality of any kind. Thus being the case, there is no need for a government or for the eternal human to subject itself to any other human. Because in this perfect state, a person will always act appropriately in order to perpetuate the perfect state. Thus, there is no free will, in essence. In other words, no one has to worry about not being as perfect as everyone else. We've always been this way, and no one has ever questioned how we became this way, because we didn't become this way. We've always been this way, eternal human beings. At last, I have to go off track here for a minute to help the world understand this point of an eternal human always being perfect and eternal. It will help in our understanding of how things work. Let's take what science has hypothesized about existence and utilize its theories to help us understand this important real truth. Consider an element in its pure form that never changes and has been this way forever. Since science has speculated that everything started with a Big Bang, let's consider the elements that caused the Big Bang. We cannot use any of the elements that science currently designates as elements, because science maintains that all the known elements came into existence after the Big Bang. Science fails us because it cannot explain what caused the Big Bang and what elements were involved in the explosion. So let's invent an element that supposedly caused the Big Bang. Let's call this new element Elohimide. Nah, let's just call it Eternal Element A. Element A has always been and could never have been created because it existed before the Big Bang in its pure form. And if we suppose that element A was somehow created out of something else, we have to wonder what was the very first thing then that created the very first thing. there always had to be something. Because if there were nothing, then there would continue to be nothing, which would end in nothing and produce nothing. But it's quite obvious to us that we are not nothing. And if there were a big bang that created our universe, then there's a possibility that there are other big bangs that have, are, and will be creating other universes. Boy, it's hard to use a fallacious theory to prove real truth, but I'll continue doing the best I can. So we have element A, and it has certain properties that do certain things. In our example, using scientific fantasy, element A creates big bangs, which then allows a possibility for life to happen somewhere down the road. Element A has always created big bangs, and it never changes what it is and what it does. Elements, however, are made of something. They are made, according to science, of atoms. So now we have the substance that is responsible for element A, which created the Big Bang, which created all things that we know, using the example that science provides us. Well, that's what you'd think, but then we have to consider that the atom is made up of something. Atoms, again, according to science, are made up of other particles called protons, neutrons, and electrons. However, we don't need to believe that an atom is made up of anything but itself, because science cannot see protons, neutrons, and electrons, but theorizes that these particles exist based on how the atom acts and reacts in certain environments. Okay, so now we conclude that the atom is an eternal thing that has always existed forever. Well, atoms form elements. Elements form molecules. Molecules form cells. Cells form skin, bone, and organs, which form a human being. If atoms have always existed and they naturally exist to form things, then why can't it be that they, in their perfect form, have always formed forever the perfect human being? That's exactly how eternal, perfect human beings exist. Because the atoms that make up the elements, that make up the molecules, that make up the cells, that make up the components of their human body, have always existed this way in their perfect form. If science, regardless of the corrupt nature of its belief system, can assume that atoms have always been, then why isn't it just as likely that the things that atoms do, they make things like human bodies, have always been done and will always be done the same forever, people without end? Science will attest to one thing, that given an unchangeable and perfect environment, an atom in its perfect form as a human being will not change, ever. The Human Reality book details many of the things about the second and third estates of experience that we go through as human beings. It does not mention anything about our first estate, but the things that are presented in the book are the real truth as they pertain to our experience in the second and third estates. But there is no joy or value in worrying about our first estate while we are going through our experiences here upon earth as mortals. Likewise, there's no joy or value in worrying about our second estate while we're going through the experience of our third. Incredibly, unhappiness and discontent will ensue in a person's life if one worries about the past or the future. We are here now in this experience. It is the only experience that really matters at this time. It is a wonderful experience. Yes, even the great misery and sorrow that we often go through. Knowing the real truth about it should enable us to realize the great importance of it to our overall experience as an eternal human being. If we then realize its great importance, then it becomes incumbent upon us to consider it as such and begin to live for the moment, for the present, and not feel guilty about the past or fearful of the future. Is it not guilt and fear that cause most of our emotional problems? We feel guilty about something we did in the past and fear what might happen to us in the future. The real truth presented in the marvelous work and wonder should help us understand that we will never change the past and we cannot change the future. It will be, what it's always been. A bunch of eternal, perfected human beings living in the present, although in different estates of experience. We have a wonderful opportunity to take advantage of this third estate of our experience, as the person we are at this time, in this moment, which we will never be again. So why not make the best of it? Because in the end, in the real end, it's all good. Really good. And that, folks, is what it's all about.